Protection planning is an essential part of a modern advisor's skill set. Here with me today to talk about this is London Money's mortgage and protection advisor, Jiten Varsani. Hi, Jiten.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for coming. First, I'd like to ask you just how important is protection in the mortgage planning process?
I think protection is extremely important, both in the mortgage planning process and, I guess, as financial planning as a whole. When we think about it from the mortgage advisory side, we help our clients get hundreds of thousands or $500,000 or even millions of pounds of debt. And as much as we will help them insure the property with buildings insurance, I feel that it's just as important to help the client insure themselves against that level of debt in the event that the income may stop, income might reduce due to a number of factors, whether it's death, ill health, etc. And I think we seem to have lost the way as an industry, that where before it used to become almost integral and a prerequisite of taking a loan out that you had to take life insurance, with that fading away is probably the best way, or no longer being the requirement. I think many clients actually fail to understand or even really comprehend the importance of the protection proposition and how important that can be for them, especially when they're taking such a large debt.
I understand you've taken a broader view of protection over the last few years. Could you expand on that a little?
Yeah, again, I mean, for anyone who's heard me talk or speak before, I think as an industry, we are very set in the ways that we advise. If I talk to my father 40 years ago when he bought his house, he remembers the conversation around, if you die, do you want your mortgage paid off? And a lot of my thinking and change came around 7 years ago when RDR first kicked in. So as a financial advisor at the time, we were developing an investment process. And it got me thinking that with protection being the sort of most important foundation of financial planning, many advisors, especially us included, we didn't have a real process or a real proposition around protection. And so what we decided to do was really build something that focused around education. So explaining to the client, here's a presentation, what protection actually is.
And do you believe that today's mortgage advisors generally are doing enough with protection planning?
I think some are, some aren't. Whether we seem to add protection on as an integral part of the overall process, or whether we just factor it in as an add-on sale, a bit like when you buy a car and someone throws in the car mats. Sometimes the conversation tends to be, well, dear Mr. Customer, I've completed your mortgage, now I'm going to talk to you about protection. And I think for me, it's we're not doing enough as an industry. There's lots of different statistics about how many people are insured, how many people have mortgages that don't have the correct insurance in place. And I think going back to what we were talking earlier is the proposition I think we need to have isn't just mortgage protection, but wider than that, it's something we look at is lifestyle protection planning. And as advisors, we are the first point of contact that many of these clients will ever have around that conversation. And I think we have a duty of care as advisors, as an industry, to make sure we meet those needs of our clients.
Yeah, it's interesting how earlier you referred to it as a foundation of planning, and I feel that many people see it as a bolt-on, so it's almost turning it around completely.
I'm a simple person, and I try and reflect that in the advice I give to my clients. As much as we need to be detailed so they understand what they're getting, the basic fundamentals of keeping it simple, keeping it clean, if that's the best word to use, really resonates with me. So when I speak to my clients, I highlight the simple factor in life, which is money comes in, money goes out. Whatever you spend your money on, whether it's the mortgage, whether it's food, bills, rent, whatever it is, it's simple. If that money coming in suddenly comes to a standstill or reduces, what implication does that have on the other end, on your outgoings? And the more simple you make it and the more you explain that to clients, the more they do get and understand the concept behind there.
So I feel that with my next question, you've covered half the answer already, but I will ask you, how might brokers improve their advisory process with protection? What tips would you give?
Everyone's going to have their own way and how they want to implement this. And for us, it was about, let's have a process. Because without the process, we were just kind of a bit willy-nilly, just throwing the conversation in at a time we deemed to be appropriate. Now, for me, it was we developed a process, we developed a proposition, which is the presentation to the client explaining protection planning. You've got to be careful as to where you bring that into the conversation as well. If you bring it in too soon during the actual mortgage process, I found that you overload the client with too much information. They're just about getting their head around the mortgage, let alone then introducing protection. But if you leave it too late, and that they're about to move in, they're arranging, packing up the house, etc., then that becomes a second thought. And they'll always say they'll come back to you, and they never do because life takes over. So for us, we built it into our proposition that as soon as the mortgage offer is issued, we would contact the client and have them come in for a separate conversation around protection. There are advisors who, I guess, need a bit of help and guidance to build that proposition. Then there's those who are exceptionally busy just doing mortgages. And if you don't have the time, pass it on. Refer it to a company you can work with in the area. I certainly know that that's what the FCA is now looking at, is if you don't have the time to do it, that's fine. Just make sure you do the right thing by the customer. We're not going to win them all. And when the client does decline it, just document it, really.
Thank you for making the trip up today to speak to us.
Thanks for having me, Gary. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for watching.